and cancer is killing more young people than ever.
With the most disturbing announcement today, cancer rates are up.
Childhood cancers have not seen new therapies in decades.
Because we're going to cure cancer.
In the United States, 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. About 10 million people die from cancer every year, making it the cause of around 1 in 6 deaths and one of the largest health problems globally. The cases of cancer are not slowing down.
20 million new cancer cases in 2022.
Now expects the number of cases to nearly double by 2050.
The WHO is predicting 35 million new cancer cases will be detected in the year 2050.
Thomas Seyfried, a cancer researcher and professor of biology at Boston College, discusses a controversial view of cancer as a mitochondrial metabolic disease. He confidently contends that cancer isn't solely determined by genetics, which goes against popular belief. I recently had the chance to interview him, delving into his perspective on the fundamental causes of cancer. So before we get into cancer and chronic diseases, you served in the United States Army during the Vietnam War and received a Bronze Star, actually 2 Bronze Stars, and an Air Medal. And I was just curious, what did you do to receive those awards?
Well, my job was, I was an officer in the field artillery, and I was a forward observer with the 1st Cavalry Division in Vietnam Fire Support Base Snuffy, which was right on the Cambodian border, 1970, 1971. And so I spent most of my time in the jungle and on fire bases, moving from one position to the next, one fire base to the next, just in a constant search and destroy missions. Not the most pleasurable activity, but certainly something that kept you alert all the time.
You were in the jungle?
Yeah, sometimes 30 days, 45 days at a time. You can see clips from the old days of what we did. You have to learn to live in the jungles. It becomes part of your life. You have to know how to survive against not only the enemy, but about every other thing in that jungle is ready to kill you. Anything that lives, it's just. But these are jobs you did when you were young. Right out of college. Don't forget that was the time of the draft. And a lot of folks were being drafted into the Army. I wasn't drafted. I went through OCS, Officer Candidate School, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So I was a forward observer with the 1st of the 5th Cavalry, and my job was to call in artillery rounds on anything that would move in that jungle. Was a target.
How did you become interested in biology, genetics, biochemistry, and chronic diseases? Why were you interested to go into that field?
Well, it was that emerged. It wasn't what I did at first. I mean, I went back to graduate school after the Army and a master's degree in genetics at Illinois State University, and then a PhD in genetics and biochemistry at the University of Illinois. The goal was to become a college professor and do research in biology. And then I did postdoctoral work at Yale University after I got my degree. And I was doing mammalian mouse genetics, and we worked in a field of epilepsy at Yale. It was a big department of epilepsy. So mapped genes for epilepsy. But at the same time, we were doing a lot of biochemistry on brain and some on tumors. Nothing was really focused on metabolism at that time. It was pure brute force biochemistry and genetics. But then things gradually, merged together over time, and you begin to see certain things that were not seen by others, linkages between biochemistry, genetics, cancer biology, and this kind of stuff. And then eventually it forms into a strategy. Once you realize the biology of the disorder you're studying, whether it's epilepsy or cancer, you start to make advances. And then we uncovered the work of Otto Warburg, who long time ago said that cancer was a metabolic disease, kind of a guy who has been kind of forgotten or kind of ignored. Now he's become, reincarnated, so to speak. We did a deep dive into his work. Famous German biochemist. In fact, there's a new book called Ravenous, all about Otto Warburg's history. Very colorful character, and we just followed what he said, and I validated what Otto Warburg said. And I couldn't understand why everybody was chasing these genes, calling cancer a genetic disease, when clearly it was not. And so I published a number of papers and I eviscerated the whole gene theory that cancer is a genetic disease. We just collected so much data. You have to be cognitively challenged or an ideologue to continue to think that cancer is a genetic disease. Once you realize it's a metabolic disease, now you have a clear path, much clearer path to management, effective management. And we continue to do this research. We're developing treatment protocols now. And we think this will eventually become the standard of care once people realize the massive amount of evidence that we're collecting to show this is a metabolic disorder. And we're continuing to do this, but you're up against an ideology that says it's not. And that ideology is cancer is a genetic disease. And that's ultimately responsible for the failure in making any major advances in managing cancer, because the theory under which people view the disorder is incorrect. So once you have the correct theory, then major advances will take place. The problem is most people don't know. It's hard to break through ideology.
I'm going to pull up a picture here. This is probably outdated because this is from 2019. Cancer's 18% globally was the cause of death. And then from this chart, which is from one of your presentations from a couple years ago, how many cases? 1,800,000. And then this is from the CDC from 2020, heart disease, 695,000, cancer, 605,000. So cancer is creeping up. It seems like it's probably going to pass heart disease in the United States. And I believe it's passed in China. I'm not sure if that's correct, if cancer has passed in China.
Yeah, that's right. It has.
And this is a chart of the types of cancer in the United States. And I guess it kind of surprised me that lung cancer is still pretty dominant over everything else. And I guess, people still smoke and we have pollution. And this is from cancer.org. 2 million new cancer cases projected in 2024 for the first time ever. So I guess my question would be, why are the cases of cancer still going up today?
Yeah, well, it's diet and lifestyle predominantly. No question about it. The lung cancer will always be there because the lung is always exposed to toxins in the air. We dropped, and that's one of the great smoke and mirrors campaigns from from American Cancer Society, where they say that we've dropped cancer death rates by 33%. That was due in large part, almost entirely, to the anti-smoking campaign of the early 1990s. So they have an interesting diagram, a figure. If we didn't stop smoking, if we continued to smoke as much as we had, the trajectory would be we would have a lot more dead cancer patients today if we continued to smoke and not have an anti-smoking campaign. So what you do is then you determine how many dead patients we have today, and then because don't forget, smoking was leading to all kinds of cancers, not just lung cancer. You had stomach cancer, a lot of variety of different cancers from heavy smoking, of course. But if we didn't stop smoking, we would have 33% more dead cancer patients today than we did. So the great smoke and mirrors is that we have reduced cancer death rates by 33%, mainly because anti-smoking campaign. So it's been entirely a preventive strategy, not a treatment. We're not dropping death rates by new advances in treatment. We're dropping death rates by prevention. So the answer to your question is why we have so much cancer still occurring, and still, in fact, I'm seeing it more and more in young people now. It's, in their late 20s, 30s, early 40s, unbelievable. It's diet and lifestyle. So what's happening, we have deviated so far from our Paleolithic existence some 100,000 years ago. For a large part of our existence as a species, we were hunter-gatherers. We evolved as a mobile species. We could track down animals and kill them. We would expend large amounts of energy. We did not have highly processed carbohydrates in our diet. There wasn't Dunkin' Donuts and delicatessens on every corner during the Paleolithic period. Our technology over centuries has brought us to the point where our diet and lifestyle is pretty immobile. We don't move as much. We eat a lot more processed carbohydrates. So we have much less exercise, a lot more stress, a lot more highly processed, convenient foods. You put all that together, and what you have is an explosion of cancer. And I have gone through all of the processes by which our body can be damaged oxidative phosphorylation, leading to cancer, inflammation, chronic hypoxia, all these kinds of things. You put it all together, and it's really our diet and lifestyle. As I said, to move and kill animals and dig up roots and berries and whatever else we ate, you're working you're using your body. Now you just drive up to a McDonald's hamburger and they hand it through the window. I mean, you don't even have to, as I said, you don't even have to unask the car. Some guy hands it through, you drive off, and you chomp it down while you're driving. I mean, you do this over and over again without exercise, and you put yourself at risk, not only for cancer. You got diabetes, type 2 diabetes, obesity. I mean, obesity is replacing smoking as a major risk factor for cancer. Dementia. All these chronic diseases, they're all linked to lifestyle. So, there's some genetic factors that put you at a higher risk, but none of these are determinants by themselves. It's a diet and lifestyle issue. And that's what I keep saying. That's our greatest contribution. The great American diet and lifestyle is what we're sending around the world to all these people. And the results are all these chronic diseases.
Before this interview, I typed into Google the question, is cancer genetic? And this is the first thing that popped up on Google for me. Maybe it's different in other areas, but it's from the National Cancer Institute, and it says, yes, cancer is genetic disease. It is caused by changes in genes that control the way cells grow and multiply. And then this is from a presentation you gave. This is paper that you said that's the most highly cited paper in, I guess, all the fields of biology.
Yeah, so about 75,000 times, according to Dr. Weinberg. Well, it says right here, cancer cells carry the oncogenic and tumor suppressor mutations that define cancer as a genetic disease. This whole concept of cancer as a genetic disease exploded when Watson and Crick were awarded the Nobel Prize for describing the genetic material, the DNA. And then it was found that there were a lot of genetic abnormalities in cancer cells, and there are a lot of abnormalities. And the problem is those genetic abnormalities in cancer cells are not the cause; they're the effects of the damage to the oxidative phosphorylation. And this is a bitter, bitter pill for the NCI, the National Cancer Institute, and the pharmaceutical industries. They can't accept the fact that those mutations that they're focusing on are downstream epiphenomena. They're not the cause; they're the effects of damage to oxidative phosphorylation, which is the way the cells get energy. So, however, when you have an ideology, it's an extremely powerful force on the brain. There are hundreds of millions of dollars tied up in cancer genome atlases and screening genes, targeted genes, and immunotherapies, and all this kind of stuff. And it's all based on an incorrect theory. It's not a genetic disease. It's a mitochondrial metabolic disease. And these big papers like this have been responsible for the fortunes of large numbers of folks doing cancer research. The National Cancer Institute awards grants for looking at genetic mutations and all this kind of stuff. And as long as we continue to do that, we're not going to make any advances. Yes, Otto Warburg had it right many years ago that it was a metabolic disease, and our research has absolutely supported the majority of what Warburg has said, and we have actually gone further to this. The problem is it's hard to overturn an entrenched dogma, especially when the dogma has indoctrinated so many scientists and physicians. It's in all the textbooks. I keep saying, look at any biology book. Cancer is a genetic disease. Biochemistry, cancer is a genetic disease. Cell biology, cancer is a genetic disease. It's a silent assumption that people just accept as well. That's just the way it is. No, it's wrong. It's not correct. Look at the evidence that we're collecting. It's absolutely incorrect. So what I'm saying to you is that the field has been off track for so long, and the ultimate results of this are the 1,700 people a day dying from cancer. And if you break it down even further, if you divide it by 24 hours, we're getting about 70 people an hour dying from cancer. And they're dying from cancer because the theory which states what the disease is incorrect. And once you understand that it's a metabolic disease, we're going to be able to drop those death rates, and we're going to keep people alive with a higher quality of life and an improved overall survival.
How do metabolic therapies differ from traditional cancer treatments like chemotherapy and radiation?
Well, chemotherapy and radiation are designed to incinerate and kill tumor cells by either burning them up with radiation, blasting the hell out of them, or some of these chemotherapies block DNA repair mechanisms. They also block the cytoskeleton inside the cells. They're targeting specifically something within the cell related to its proliferation. Metabolic therapy, and also those are indiscriminate kinds of treatments where you damage so many other parts of your body in the attempt to kill the tumor cells. You see a lot of bald-headed cancer patients. Their hair falls out as the result of the trying to kill cancer cells. Their gut is oftentimes damaged. You get mucositis. The gums start bleeding. You have all these horrible side effects from these attempts with toxic chemicals and radiation to do this. You're assaulting your body with toxins in an attempt to kill these proliferating tumor cells. Metabolic therapy recognizes that all cancer cells, regardless of what tissue, they because they can't get energy through normal oxygen, they get energy through what we call fermentation, energy without oxygen. This is what Warburg had said, in which we have firmly validated. So we tracked down, we did interrogations of these cancer cells, find out what they need to survive. And they live on two fuels predominantly, the sugar glucose and the amino acid glutamine. So we tested all these other things, and it doesn't make any difference what kind of cancer it is. It seems to thrive on this fermentation. So yes, you can incinerate the cell and you can poison, but you can just pull the plug on their fermentable fuels as well, and that will kill them. Because the issue here is without energy, nothing can grow. No cell can grow without energy. We breathe air. The air we're breathing is allowing our cells to get energy through oxidative phosphorylation. Now, here's an interesting thing. Cancer cells can survive and grow without oxygen. The fastest way to kill somebody to test whether they're using oxygen is cyanide. And the Jamestown massacre with everybody drinking the Kool-Aid laced with cyanide killed all those folks real quick with cyanide. It's a drug that binds to cytochrome C and shuts down energy through oxygen very, very quickly. So you die. Anything that's living on oxidative phosphorylation will be killed real quick when cyanide is ingested. But cancer cells, they can live in cyanide. They don't die from cyanide. They don't die from living in the absence of oxygen. So this is very, very different than normal cells of our body. So once you realize that they thrive on fermentation, they don't use oxygen, then the question is, well, what are they using? So we interrogated them, and they use glucose and they use glutamine. So the idea then is if I take away the glucose and glutamine while transitioning the whole body to fatty acids and ketones, which the tumor cells cannot use because they have a defective oxidative energy metabolism, we can then transition and protect the body and then selectively go after the glucose and glutamine and kill the tumor cells without toxicity. And that's the whole strategy for metabolic therapy. That's how it differs. It differs from poisonous chemicals and radiation by targeting the very essence of what those tumor cells need to grow. They can't live without energy. We have defined what they are using for energy, and we know normal cells can switch away from those. They don't need the glutamine and but you have to do very careful on the glutamine because it's also an essential fuel for our immune system. So when we go out and kill tumor cells with metabolic therapy, we have to be very careful. We need our immune system to come back in, pick up the corpses, the dead tumor cells. So if you're too aggressive on targeting glutamine, you're going to paralyze the very systems of the biology that we need to pick up the dead bodies. So again, you need to understand the biology of cancer. Once you understand the biology of cancer, what I'm saying makes perfect sense, and it actually works. It works really well. We've got very great success in preclinical models as well as in humans because we can selectively kill tumor cells while protecting the rest of the body, the brain, and the other organs by transitioning over to an alternative fuel. A lot of words here, but all of what I'm saying has all been published in open access papers, and anyone who would like to do a deeper dive on it can just go read the papers for themselves.
There are different types of cancer. There's colon cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer. So are you claiming that all cancer is fundamentally the same and can be treated the same?
Absolutely. I did the study on this. I mean, I've spent years looking at the structure of the mitochondria in every major cancer. All of the major cancers that kill 95, 98% of us all have the same problem: lung, colon, breast, bladder, the blood cancers, brain cancers, all these different cancers, melanoma, all have the same problem. I look at the mitochondria. Mitochondria, the energy organelle of the cell, is disturbed. It's abnormalities in number, structure, and function, meaning that the cell is going to have to ferment in order to survive. So this fermentation is these are ancient pathways of energy metabolism that existed before oxygen came into the atmosphere 2.5 billion years ago. So these cancer cells are all of them, regardless of what organ they're coming from, all have the same problem. So the answer to your question is absolutely yes. And we've shown that. They all respond the same way: breast cancer, colon cancer, brain cancer. They can't live without glucose and glutamine. So you target those two fuels while transitioning the body over to ketones and fatty acids, and you have a chance to have long-term effective management with a higher quality of life. Now, when you hear on TV all these hospitals, Dana-Farber, MD Anderson, whatever, Sloan Kettering, Moffitt Centers, all these, they're all saying, "Oh, we have all these. We have cancer as many diseases. We have specialists for your cancer." It's all bull. Cancer is a singular disease. It can be managed by a similar kind of strategy because we understand the biology of cancer. If those folks making those claims really understood the biology of cancer, they wouldn't be saying that nonsense. If they understood, they don't read the scientific literature. I don't know if they don't read it, they don't understand it, they don't want to know about it. It's really a very unsettling. It gets me very frustrated when I hear people speak about these things and they have no clue. What are these guys doing? Don't they read the scientific literature? Oh, they go for the what? Oh, well, the National Cancer Institute says it's a genetic disease. Therefore, well, the National Cancer Institute is incorrect. The theory that they're basing is incorrect. They have to recognize that. And we have the data to support that. So we and others, not just our group, there's a lot of people saying the same thing. It's just that the system says that it's a genetic disease, making all cancers seem like they're different from each other. And we're saying, no, they're all very, very similar. They can't live without glucose and glutamine. In fact, I've thrown the challenge to the entire cancer field. You show me a tumor cell that's surviving on glucose and glutamine, on any fuel other than glucose and glutamine is growing. And so far, no one's been able to do that anywhere.
You get a lot of pushback, I'm assuming, from some of the medical community. When you came out with the book in 2012, did anyone high up in the medical field call you and tell you to stop talking about this?
No, they don't do that. They just ignore it. It's funny. I just found out the other day. I sold more copies of my book in March of 2024 in 1 month than I had sold when the book first came out over 6 month periods. So whatever's happening the people are starting to recognize and some of the guys at the institutions are starting to recognize that we know what we're talking about. We have hard evidence to support what we're talking about. It just takes time, man. You're overturning a paradigm, massively profitable paradigm, and you're coming along with an alternative view. And the people are interested in this. People want to live. People are interested in. They fear chemicals and radiation and this kind of stuff. They know if there's an alternative. Where we get most of the pushback is in the oncology clinics themselves. When the people run to the oncology clinic and say, "Listen, doc, I want to do metabolic therapy as an alternative to chemo and radiation." Oh, well, there's no support for that. Oh no, cancer doesn't depend on glucose. Eat whatever you want. So that's where the biggest resistance seems to happen right now. Is that the oncologists in the major hospitals are unaware, unfamiliar with cancer as a metabolic disease. So you see that that's where the resistance seems to be most prevalent. So we need a re-education. There has to be a re-educational mission, retrain the oncologists to know that you can manage this disease. And we're also not throwing out all of the standards of care that are currently being used. Every part of what we're using to manage cancer has an appropriate time and place to use some of those things. Like some of these chemotherapies can be very, very effective in very low dosages if the patient is prepared metabolically and is strong. So some of these chemos can work even better than they do. Radiation has its place, except for many cancers, except brain cancer. We've made that abundantly clear. But we just have all these tools. We just need to know how to use them in light of the view that cancer is a metabolic disease. So it's going to be a rearrangement of the deck chairs and how we're going to fully manage this disorder. Far less toxicity, far more efficacy. So it'll happen. It just takes time for the folks to understand what's going on and how to apply the different tools that we have.
You've mentioned we don't see cancer for indigenous populations, but are we really testing these people, and what studies have been done?
Yeah, excellent question. You guys, you have very good questions. I applaud your background on this. I looked at the work of Albert Schweitzer, the great humanitarian physician from the early 1900s up in, he would study these African tribes, folks that were living according to their traditional ways. And he was shocked that he didn't find, now he's a physician who was actually looking for cancer, looking at the different kinds of diseases. And one of the things he mentioned, he says, we don't find any cancer in these folks. What's going on? And this has been seen in the Eskimos, the Inuits, these kinds of folks. Before Western civilization and diet and lifestyle entered their societies, these guys were quite healthy. Cancer wasn't recognized. Some of the tribes and folks never even had a term for cancer. They didn't know what it was. It was so rare. So, and animals in the wild, like wolves, which are all domestic dogs, evolved from the wolf, selective breeding from the wolf. Wolves in the wild, cancer is extremely rare, but yet the domestic dog, cancer is the number one killer of domestic dogs because they're eating the same crap that we're eating, all this synthetic food that we're giving these dogs. So natural populations living according to their natural ways, cancer is extremely rare. There are certain interesting animal populations like the Tasmanian devils, very interesting kind of a cancer. It's an actual transmission cancer in the saliva. So we've looked into that as well. There are some, perturbations, but by and large, humans and animals living according to their natural ways as they evolved, cancer is extremely rare. So this brings us to the say, well, what's going on? So it's diet and lifestyle that's ultimately responsible for the development of cancer in all Western societies. So yes, we have documented evidence. Physicians did look at these primitive folks. Cancer was rare, but it came very prominent. Now, the Inuits, I visited the medical school at Thunder Bay, Canada, which services the Inuit population of Canada. And those poor folks are riddled with type 2 diabetes, cancer, dementia, every kind of a chronic disease, when they used to be the healthiest, some of the healthiest people on the planet. So as soon as the Western diet and lifestyle get into these societies, man, all hell breaks loose as far as the your health goes down the crapper real fast, and within a couple of generations, doesn't take long. You evolved over tens of thousands of years in a certain diet and lifestyle, and then all of a sudden, within a couple of generations, you're riddled with all kinds of chronic diseases. So it just tells us our bodies were supremely designed to store energy because we were a starved species. Hundreds of years, thousands of years hunting and gathering. And then all of a sudden, within a few thousand years, you have fast food everywhere. You have much less exercise. Within a few generations, you're suffering from all these chronic diseases. This is not a mystery. This is very clear if you understand evolutionary biology. Everything that we're seeing is absolutely predictable.
What's your thoughts on eating meat, like the carnivore diet? It seems to be kind of more popular now. And, there's grass-fed beef, organic grass-fed beef, and then there's processed beef. And then cancer institutions claim that, red meat's bad to eat.
I don't know what to say about all this stuff. People ask me this stuff all the time. The fish guy eats only fish. The guy eats only some sort of leafy vegetables. Some guy eats only cows. I don't know what to say. The bottom line, if you don't eat much, you get a lot of exercise and the food you're eating is natural. You probably don't have to worry too much about it. I mean, don't forget, we're omnivores. What does that mean? Humans are omnivores. We didn't evolve to eat only plants. We didn't evolve to eat only animals. We didn't evolve to eat only fish. We evolved to eat everything. Anything that walks, crawls, or flies on this planet, we can eat it. All right. Otherwise, you and I would not have this conversation today because our species would have been extinct. So it's just that simple. We evolved to eat anything, and so you have to keep that in mind. Our bodies were supremely designed to eat. That's why we're called omnivores. We're not just carnivores. We're not just vegans. We're not just pescatarians. We can eat whatever comes in front of us if it's nutritious and balanced in micro and macronutrients. It's probably very good for you.
What is your diet like? You ever have a donut every once in a while?
Yeah, I think most people do. Up there in Maine, they got the greatest donut, Condon's Donuts. Unbelievable. You tremble while you eat these donuts. It's like, give me a break. But you don't eat them every day. If I ate them every day, I'd be in the hospital with type 2 diabetes and cancer and every other kind of thing. But, these are treats. We actually have developed some of the tastiest foods that you can possibly imagine. These chalupas and these burgers and some of these kinds of things. They're delicious. For me, some people say to me, "Oh, can you eat that?" You've given me a break. I eat whatever. The problem is you got to put it all in perspective. You try to get as much exercise as you can. You try, like you said, the guy who eats the hamburgers. He only eats the hamburgers a day. He walks a lot. He gets a lot of exercise. It's just the fact that if you eat this stuff a lot and you don't exercise and you get fat, you're putting yourself at risk. I mean, it's just that simple, but a lot of misinformation about what's coming out. This carnivore, vegan, all this kind of stuff. These poor folks, they're just bombarded with misinformation every time you turn around. So, go back to our ancestry, consider their ways, and become wise.
So what is water-only fasting, and how long does someone fast for? I'm assuming it's per scenario, per the person.
Depends on how much they weigh. Water-only fasting is not easy. I mean, did you ever do it? Did you ever try not eating did you ever try that, Joe?
Not weeks.
Everybody, there's one thing people like to do. They always like to talk about fasting after they've had a big meal. This is always like a great conversation piece. Try it when you haven't eaten for 3 days. No, it's not easy. Going cold turkey. See, the brain is addicted to glucose. It's a very powerful fuel in our brain. And we talk about comfort foods. Why? Because when you're feeling depressed or you feel bad, you can just get a big bolognese, spaghetti and meatballs, or a big donut or bagel or whatever you want to eat, pizza. Our brains are addicted to glucose, and if you go cold turkey, you get very angry. You go through withdrawal. You actually have kind of a withdrawal. It's very hard. So for cancer patients or even people who just want to do this water only fasting, you try doing it. It's pretty tough. As I said to the students, after 3 days, 4 days of not eating, just drinking water, you start looking at your pet in a different way. You start you'd be surprised. The real human being comes out. You don't believe me? You try it yourself, see what happens. But for cancer patients and anyone, we suggest or we think it's easier. You go zero carb for 5 to 7 days. Your body starts to gradually adjust to the absence of glucose, and then you can jump into water fasting a lot easier. Your body seems to adjust. But interestingly enough, the longest water only fasting is dependent on what your body weight is and how long you can go. People who are massively overweight can go far longer than people who are thin. This has been Angus Barberi. You can look him up. He set the world record. You talked about the Guinness record of eating hamburgers. Well, the Guinness record for how long a person can go without eating anything, just drinking water, was 377 days. That was a guy from Scotland named Angus Barberi. I think he weighed like almost 500 pounds. And over the course of this year, a little over a year, he lost so much weight, got down to 180 pounds. He's on the records. I mean, you can look it up, Angus Barberi, water only fasting for. And my late friend, George Cahill from the Joslin Diabetes Center here in Boston, used to do fasting for water only fasting for his morbidly obese patients, looking at insulin and glucagon and these kinds of hormones. So they could go quite along. He fasted some guy, I think, for 6 months. A guy lost his job in the postal service because he got too fat, couldn't deliver the mail. So he lost all kinds of weight and got back, looked very healthy. I've seen so many folks get super healthy on this water only fasting. But for cancer, yes, Guy Tannenbaum, you can look him up on the web. He did water only fast. He came into my office. He had been already on an 18-day water only fast. He was also overweight and sick. He had diabetes, prostate cancer, high blood pressure, hypertension, every chronic disease you can put under the umbrella he had. And then he got rid of it all. Cancer went away with the diabetes, with the high blood pressure. He was doing these water only fasts. Your body gets used to it. I've never done it. If I had to do it, I certainly would. I've dabbled in it a little bit. I know what it involves, and I know what the strategies would be. But how long you can go depends again. Your body fat stores all kinds of fat-soluble vitamins. Your liver stores vitamins. Your bones have minerals. So your body is actually supremely designed to live. And we evolved to be without food. It's just that now we store so much of it in the form of fat from all the foods that we're eating. And but yes, it all depends on your body weight, how long you can go with water only fasting. So clearly, it's all related to that. And folks that have cancer, if you go long enough, I published this in the dog paper and in my book, the concept of autolytic cannibalism, which is when your body hasn't had food for a long enough period of time, you're just drinking water. You have an internal surveillance. Your body has a surveillance system where energy efficiency now becomes an absolute requirement for every cell and every organ of the body has to reconfigure its energy metabolism. And this happens internally to the cell called autophagy, where inefficient organelles are digested inside the cell. And what emerges is a cell that is highly energy efficient. And if you have populations of cells like cancer cells that are energy inefficient, and the body reaches a certain level energy threshold, the body will go after the tumor and attack. Our immune cells will attack the tumor, eat it, and redistribute the fuel of the tumor cells to the rest of the body, fueling the entire body from the cells of the tumor. But that only happens when you get down into these low, after you haven't had fuel into your body, the body will attack. So we mobilize the fats out of our fat stores, adipose tissues. The fats go to the liver. Liver chops them up into water-soluble ketone bodies, which are then distributed to the rest of the body, the brain included. And cancer cells will be dissolved, attacked by autolytic cannibalism. The body will go after those tumor cells and dissolve them. So, but you have to get down into the lowest level of threshold when the body now starts to realize there ain't nothing in the environment for me to eat. Therefore, we better do an internal surveillance and find out every cell in our system better carry its weight. There's no acceptance of cellular bureaucracy, inefficient, sloth. None of that stuff is all gone. We're an unbelievable machine in the way our bodies will work under the right conditions.
Doesn't the liver make glucose even if you don't eat glucose?
Yeah, it's called gluconeogenesis. It's driven by the hormone glucagon. So don't forget, there is a certain level of glucose that our body needs, but we can push that glucose as long as we can replace the need for glucose. So here's the situation. Our muscles store glucose as well in the form of glycogen. And that's an evolutionarily conserved process. The muscle does not share the sugar, the glucose in the muscle, mainly because we evolved to either run or attack animals, run away from them or kill them. You have to have muscle energy to do that. So if the muscle is sharing the glucose with other organs and the bear is chasing us, we're dead meat. So we have to have that as a conserved process. But the liver has to continue making some sugar for the muscles. And what we do is we can take certain here's another thing. Yeah, when you start making glucose from the liver, what are we going to dissolve? If we're down that low and our liver has to make glucose because we're not eating food, so what do we break up? We break up digestive enzymes. You're not digesting anything, so we're going to use those enzymes to go to the liver, and the liver will take those and make fuel glucose to keep the certain essential cells that need glucose, like our erythrocytes. The blood, they use glucose to make transfer gases. The muscle needs it. The brain uses glucose predominantly, but the brain can switch over to ketone bodies. So there's a distribution of glucose that's made through gluconeogenesis for those cells that are absolutely essential for our survival, like the brain and the muscle and things like this. But the majority of organs are then burning ketone bodies that are from the fat. So yes, glucagon will elevate blood sugar from the process of gluconeogenesis, but also mobilizes fat out of our adipose tissues. And glucagon also allows the fat to be mobilized for fatty acids and ketone bodies. So fats and ketone bodies spare muscle, because the last thing we ever want to do is go into muscle. And then we enter into the process of starvation, which is really when we start dissolving our muscles. And horrible enough as it is, the last muscle in the human starvation is like the worst way a person can die, because what happens is the body will eventually turn on the diaphragm, which is, and I learned this from George Cahill's discussions with me. The diaphragm is the muscle that allows our lungs to get breathe air. And what we do is, once our body starts turning on to and digesting the diaphragm, we drown in our own body fluids. So this is what happens. And so there's a hierarchy. Water-only fasting is healthy. But if you keep doing that, you enter into the pathological state of starvation, where gluconeogenesis is driven by the dissolution of our muscle mass. And that then leads to, it's a progressive event. Sometimes it's a momentum that the body uses. a self-digesting process. And sometimes it's even not possible to intervene. It's like a momentum. I've learned this from George Cahill's studies of starving folks. And so we have to know how the body works under all different physiological conditions. But gluconeogenesis is an important part for our survival.
And from my understanding, glutamine is one of the most abundant amino acids in the body. And so when you would take you would take a pill or a drug that would reduce that.
Yeah, so that's an important thing. As I said, glucose and glutamine are the drivers of the cancer fermentation metabolism. But you see, glutamine, if you look at anybody's blood, of all the amino acids that we have in the blood stream, glutamine is the highest. It's the most abundant. And glutamine is an essential. It's considered non-essential because you can make it from glucose, but it's absolutely essential for cancer. But again, our gut uses a lot of glutamine. Our immune cells, macrophages and leukocytes and these kinds of cells use a large amount of glutamine. The urea cycle is dependent on glutamine. So and the cancer cell absolutely needs glutamine. So how you do that, that's why we developed the press pulse therapeutic strategy for managing cancer. We can press down glucose quite effectively because the body can transition to fatty acids and ketones. But we've got to be very careful about targeting glutamine, because if you're too aggressive, you damage your gut, you paralyze the immune system, and you can cause serious metabolic disturbances. So that's why the drugs that we use to target glutamine are pulsed. They're given over short periods of time in certain dosages that will be selectively killing tumor cells, but not allowing damage to happen to our gut and our immune system. And those cells that absolutely need glutamine for normal physiological function. This all comes back to having a good knowledge of biology. So you need to know the biology of normal cells, and you need to know the biology of cancer cells. And you need to know how you play those biologies off of each other. And that's how we know how to manage cancer, because we're familiar with the needs of the normal cells of the body and the requirements of the cancer cell. So it's a kind of a package deal. As you say, it's really interesting. When you understand the biology of organs and systems, and you understand the biology of dysregulated cell growth, you can play the different cells and organs off of each other, maximizing what our bodies are capable of doing, and knowing the limitations of the tumor cells, making them extremely vulnerable to attack once you understand the concepts.
Something that I find interesting is women will get their breast removed. I guess you would call it preventative surgery, where the surgeon removes tissue that does not contain cancer cells, but has the probability of becoming cancerous in the future. What are your thoughts on that?
This is medieval. This is nonsense. This is like nuts. All of the clinical trials that have been done have shown that there's no improvement in overall survival for women with breast cancer, whether they do a lumpectomy or radical mastectomy, cutting the breast off. I spoke to a breast cancer surgeon one time, and I said, why do you guys prefer to take breasts off rather than lumpectomy? Lumpectomy requires finances too. You don't get as much money for a lump. It's just terrible. From a lump where it's easy to, he said, taking a woman's breast off is like filleting a fish. It's much easier. It's more lucrative. And I said, but it doesn't make any difference to overall survival. No, it doesn't. So that's what I'm saying. Why would you do that when there's no evidence to say what you're doing makes any sense? It's just crazy to do that. You don't need to do it. I call it medieval because we call it mutilation surgery. It's just, you can prevent the cancer from spreading by doing metabolic therapy. You can shrink the lump. As I said, a lot of they do these biopsies, and people say, "Oh, you shouldn't scare people by telling them the biopsy can spread the cancer." I'm not saying it, man. You should see how many articles are in the literature saying the same thing. Published studies showing that. People say, Peter Attia was saying, Tom, you can frighten people by saying this. Peter, what do you want me to do? What paper do you want me to reject? There's dozens and dozens of papers in the scientific literature showing that spread, and not only for breast, it can happen for all major cancers once you start messing around, spreading the tumor. Kill them, shrink them up. If there's still something there, surgically debulk the whole thing. There's a strategy to use surgery. It should be done in the right context, not sometimes the way we're doing it today. Listen, I know I'm saying things that are very provocative, but I'm not pulling this out of my butt. These are papers that are published in the scientific literature. The problem is people don't read them. Everybody says, "Oh, I didn't know that." Well, you don't read the literature. I read the literature. I do the research and I read the literature, and I know what I'm talking about because I've read so many of these papers that apparently a lot of people don't read.
You briefly spoke on this, but one of the pushbacks is there hasn't been any clinical trials for metabolic therapy. So can there be trials in the future, or is there tests that you are working on like that?
Oh yeah, we're working on it. But the problem is you have to do a clinical trial, you have to have an institution that's willing to do it. You have to have knowledgeable people that know how to do this. And you have to know what you're doing. The pharmaceutical companies have designed these trials, double-blind crossover, where a singular drug is given to patients and switch them back and forth and this kind of thing. Metabolic therapy doesn't work that way. So you have to change the whole design of the trial. You have to look at each person as an entity, as a separate entity. When cancer patients come into the clinic, some people have diabetes, some people have hypertension along with their cancer, some people don't have these things. Each person has to be viewed as a separate entity. So the concept of the trial must be redesigned in light of each individual. You have to have people that are knowledgeable to know. We do extensive blood work before we do any work. My colleagues, that is, of course, do extensive blood work on the patients before we institute any of the therapies that we have proposed in our treatment. We're in the process of publishing a very comprehensive treatment protocol. You have to, before you do a trial, you have to have a protocol of how you're going to plan to treat patients, identify and treat them. We don't have it. We have it now. We've written it out. We have over 40 MDs and scientists on this treatment protocol. So before you can do a clinical trial, you have to have a treatment protocol, and you have to know what to do and how to do it, and you have to be willing to adjust the trial as the patient's condition improves under certain conditions. Dosage, timing, and scheduling might have to be adjusted differently for one person to the different. So the way where metabolic therapy works is going to have to require a very different design. And then, of course, where's the revenue generation coming? How are you going to generate revenue comparable to what clinical trials are being done now? They're rounding up these folks left and right in these big hospitals and throwing them into these clinical trials like they're guinea pigs. And, those trials, the way we're doing it today, are not working because, as we've said, there's so many cancer patients dying. So, yes, the clinical trials will happen for metabolic therapy once the field becomes educated and has a treatment protocol in hand, because people will want to do this. So, again, we're in the very early stages of this, but eventually it will happen. 100
years from now, what do you think people will say about cancer?
I think they're going to look at it as a chronic problem. And I think, preventive strategies will certainly have taken a much bigger place. People knowledge of understanding what causes cancer and how you get it in the first place. I think that knowledge will come more and more over time. And I think we're going to have very, very excellent strategies for managing cancer without toxicity. It's going to be just one of those things that we're just going to have to know about and how to manage it once the knowledge base. I don't think we're going to have the fear that we have today associated with cancer, because, even the commercials on TV, they show the faces of someone just diagnosed. They look like they've just seen the angel of death or something. And they now have to go through these horrible medieval treatments that nobody wants, fearing that. I think we're going to do away with a lot of that. I think we're going to have less toxic, more effective treatments. The fear-stricken is not going to be that. I don't think it's going to, I got this tumor, I got to go now and do some things. Biggest problem is going to have to stop eating donuts or something. So I think we're going to have much more logical, biologically relevant ways to treat cancer rather than the crazy stuff that we're doing today.
You've talked about GKI and ketosis, and you said that if it gets to the number 2 and below, that's good for a cancer patient.
I think so. We do that. We developed that because when I first was working with some cancer folks that came to me for help, as I said, I can't treat them. I can't tell them what to do or what not to do. We were measuring sugar and blood sugar and ketones independently of each other. And this one individual really gave me a lot of information. She had a brainstem kind of tumor that she lived quite a long time with it. Eventually, she passed away. We didn't know about the glutamine issue at the time, but she would measure her blood sugar and ketones daily and send me the results. And she got into an argument with a person who took her handicapped spot, and she got very angry about that. And she did her blood sugar measurement. She found out, wow, the blood sugar went through the roof. And then she emailed me and said, "Oh, is my cancer going to grow?" And I said, well, she had been on a metabolic diet program. And I said, "What's your ketone levels?" And she said, "Oh, no, they're still high." So my student and I, Josh Meidenbauer and Purna Mukherjee, we said, well, maybe it's better to divide the blood sugar by the ketones. And then we got a number that called the GKI, which was much more stable and less volatile than measuring each of these fuels by themselves. So when you restrict calories, your blood sugar goes down and your ketones go up, and then you can divide the blood sugar by the ketones in millimolar. So we published this so that the units of measurement for sugar and ketones are the same, and we published this. And now the Keto Mojo meter will measure both of those. You can buy it from Amazon. You push the button, you get a GKI number. And if you keep your GKI at 2.0 below, now you're putting metabolic pressure on the tumor cells. So it's a kind of a quantitative guideline for the cancer patient to know whether or not they're in a zone of metabolic management of their tumor. And then once the patient is in this zone, then you can deliver drugs that further target the glucose and glutamine in low dosage, and they'll have much greater effect. So this is a whole worked out strategy. So it gives the patient an opportunity to work with the clinician, work with the system. They then know they can read from their own treatments, from their own finger pricks, and now we're getting free Libras and all these things that can monitor this stuff without pricking your finger. They can then take charge of their own destiny. They know if they're in low GKI values, the tumor cells are going to start getting hammered. So then you bring on the glutamine targeting. So this is all a staged process for the eventual clinical trials. Yes. So it starts to help the body get stronger and the tumor weaker when you have GKIs at 2.0 below.
What about babies who get cancer? Babies in the mother's womb that have cancer, would you still say that is not genetic?
It's not genetic because we know that no cancer can start without damage to oxidative phosphorylation, which is damage to the mitochondria. How does that happen in very young children or even in the fetus? Not that we have too many of them happening, but we do have little kids that develop brain tumors. And all the tumors that we've seen are all fermenters. So how that happens, and we know that during the development of organs, especially in the brain, blood vessels can become occluded. There's developmental anomalies that will happen during development that can then cut off oxygen to a certain population of cells intermittently, thus damaging the mitochondria in those cells chronically, leading to a compensatory fermentation and dysregulated cell growth. The issue is, of course, is when you look at the tumor that the developed, whether it's in the womb, whether it's an early 1 year, 2-year-old child, you see that the cells are fermenting like crazy. So how that precisely happened, we don't know. But we do know what had to have happened, and we do know that the cells can't survive without glucose and glutamine. As a matter of fact, we've developed a new pediatric model for brain cancer because of the tragedy of what we're doing to these little kids. We're surgically mutilating them. We're giving them high dose radiation. The poor little kids are just devastated by this. And we've found that we can effectively manage pediatric cancer with metabolic therapy. So we have really good preclinical evidence for this. I think we could just keep these kids alive so much longer because we're targeting the very essence of what the tumor happens. Now, the exact timing of what happened, we're not sure of, but we know what had to have happened, and we know what to do to manage the disorder. So again, we can manage pediatric cancer just as well as we can manage adult cancers with metabolic therapy.
So when people say that cancer runs in my family, you wouldn't agree with that?
Well, it's hard to say because what could run in their family is a diet and lifestyle as well. They're living in the same environment, they're eating the same stuff, they're doing the same things, and that could predispose them to cancer just as well as an inherited germline mutation. We have germline mutations that put people at greater risk. The BRCA1 breast cancer mutation can put some women at a greater risk for developing breast cancer. We know that. The Li-Fraumeni disorder can put people at can put people at risk. The retinoblastoma mutation puts people at risk. The issue, of course, is none of these mutations are 100% penetrant, which memeans that there's always some people that may have the mutation that never develop the cancer. That makes these gene mutations, these germline mutations, as opposed to somatic mutations, that makes these our secondary risk factors, because we don't know why a woman with a BRCA1, we know that all women who develop a breast tumor from BRCA1 mutation, they're fermented, their tumors are fermenting. But what about the women that have the same mutation, never develop the breast tumor? And for whatever reason, the mutation in that woman never damaged the mitochondria to cause a compensatory fermentation. And we're not sure about that. We don't know why an inherited mutation in one woman would develop because her mitochondria were damaged, whereas in another woman with the exact same mutation that never gets mitochondrial damage. There's something else that happens in these folks that prevent those mutations from causing the dysregulated cell growth and the switch from oxphos to fermentation. So there's a few things we don't know, but we do know that even if you have the mutation, you can significantly reduce the risk by making sure that you keep a low GKI. So if a person says, oh, you have two choices. You can either have surgical, like Angelina Jolie, the actress, made it very famous to say prophylactic breast removals, ovary removal, and this kind of thing if they have the mutation. Or you could, once you recognize that, you could significantly reduce the risk by keeping a GKI low, knowing that that will prevent or prevent the likelihood of that risk factor from being fully developed. So there's a lot of choice. Once you have an understanding, then people can make choices based on the knowledge.
Something you talked about, I'm trying to remember, it was, I think, it was something to do with the immunotherapy where people develop a high fever, have better results.
That goes back to the work of William Coley during the early part of the 1900s, right? He would treat people. This is very interesting. You're good. You seem to know a lot about the really key issues here. I don't. You must have done a lot of deep look into this, because go look it up. William Coley would treat cancer patients with live strep and streptococcus. Right. Well, streptococcus can kill you. And what happens when you get strep infection, which I have had, cellulitis and this kind of thing, man, it's brutal. Your body goes into a massively high fevers, very, very high fevers, in an attempt to kill the bacteria. And what Coley was seeing that, wow, some of these people that had these metastatic cancers, when given live strep, would kill once the fever broke, the cancer was gone. And high body temperature was killing the tumor cells. And you can read about the patients. They said, Doc, either kill me or cure me. So he would give them live strep. Then he realized that if heat inactivated strep would cause the body to have high fevers. And that would often be associated with the elimination of the tumors. And the immunotherapies that we use today, these super expensive immunotherapies, Keytruda, Opdivo, and all these things you hear advertised, is well documented that the patients that seem to do best are the ones that develop a very, very high fever to these immunotherapies. And people say, oh, wow, the immunotherapy is really working so well, but it's actually linked to the high fever. So you say to yourself, well, why would a high fever kill cancer cells? And our bodies are every cell in our body has adapted to under stressful conditions. Adaptive versatility is the term. We use that from the concepts of evolutionary concepts of Rick Potts. Our bodies can adjust to body temperature elevations, obviously not to super high, and then we die from the high fever. But what happens in the cancer cell is that they have a lot of mutations in the nucleus as secondary effects from the cancer. And when the body is put under these very stringent conditions, only the cells that evolved through millions of years can adapt to the high temperature, whereas the tumor cells can't. They can't adapt because the mutations prevent adaptive versatility. So the high fevers selectively kill off the tumor cells. It's unbelievable. So you really need to know the biology. You need to understand biology before you can connect the dots. So yes, immunotherapies work best if the patient gets a high fever. And the high fever will kill the tumor cells because they lack adaptive versatility because of the mutations in the nucleus. You can connect all these dots. Once you understand the biology, everything makes sense and is supported by scientific research.
I'm not an expert in the medical field or anything, but so cancer feeds on sugar, but sugar does not cause cancer. Sugar doesn't cause damage to the mitochondria, but it's the sugar, if it gets in the blood, that can lead to inflammation, which can damage the mitochondria.
Yes. So you're right. Sugar is not considered a carcinogen. Sugar, what we call sugar, is glucose. Our body makes glucose, like you said, through gluconeogenesis. I mean, when we eat foods, we get broken down to glucose. The issue here is that if you have consistently high blood sugar levels, high glucose levels, this can create systemic inflammation. Inflammation is known to chronically damage respiration, oxidative phosphorylation, leading to compensatory fermentation and dysregulated cell growth. So, yes, sugar is an essential metabolite for the function of our bodies. We break down foods that we eat to glucose. The problem is that if you have chronically high levels of glucose, chronically high levels of insulin, as we call insulin insensitivity type 2 diabetes, you put yourself at risk for cancer and a variety of other chronic disorders, including diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, all of these kinds of things. But glucose itself is not the carcinogen. It's the abuse of taking in too much glucose and allowing the body to go into an inflamed condition as the result of this chronically high sugar, which is also linked to all these other conditions. You're actually right. You're very, very accurate. Some people say, oh, sugar is a carcinogen. Sugar is itself not a carcinogen. It can lead to cancer, but through the effect on chronic inflammation. That's the connection there.
I was watching an interview from, I think it was 10 months ago and you were talking about an immunotherapy that costs $250,000, and then you compared it to a alternative called, I think, Pyrogen, and you said it was like pennies.
Say again, what was that?
There was something called Pyrogen, and then you compared it to some expensive immunotherapy that costs like $250,000.
Maybe it was the parasite medications, fenbendazole, embendazole, these kinds of things. They target glucose and glutamine. The CAR T immunotherapy, and the field is like addicted in a way to these immunotherapies. They're very, very expensive. What we're doing, it called precision medicine, personalized immunotherapies, this kind of stuff. Yes, those things are very, very expensive. But metabolic therapy can do the same thing. I don't know. I can't know the kind of molecule you're speaking about. Maybe the pronunciation or the structure. Once I would know that. But you're right. They're highly expensive. I mean, CAR T immunotherapy, chimeric T antigen receptor therapy. They take your blood cells out. You can ship them somewhere. They're engineered to come back into your blood and target some cancer cell. The problem with some of that stuff is some of these immunotherapies just don't stop at targeting the tumor cells. They blow out your liver and kidneys. You can suffer from a lot of adverse effects from these very expensive immunotherapies. Again, so all of that stuff is generated on the somatic mutation theory that cancer is a genetic disease. If cancer is not a genetic disease, none of those therapies are going to be optimal for the majority of people with cancer. I mean, we've been using immunotherapies now for over 5 or 7 years, and the death rate keeps going up. So clearly, it's not going to be the solution to the cancer problem. And that they're too high. The price is too high. What are you charging all this money for? I mean, you can do metabolic therapy and get a better result. So people just need to know that.
I'm going to pull up a chart here from one of your works. Not sure if you can read that. It's kind of small print.
Yeah, I wrote. My students and I developed this, so we should know about it.
Yeah, if you don't care to just speak on this.
Yeah, this is great. This is my students and I in my cancer class. We started to how do we link all of what we know about the biology of cancer, the genetics of everything that we can know about the origin and management and development of cancer into a single image. And this image encompasses hundreds of thousands of pieces of data on cancer, thousands and thousands of scientific articles, all kinds of experiments. So the oncogenic paradox is what Albert Szent-Györgyi, who won the Nobel Prize for his work on vitamin C, he came up with this concept, the oncogenic paradox. How is it so many things that can cause cancer? What is the common pathophysiological mechanism, or is there a common pathophysiological mechanism that could link carcinogens, radiation, intermittent hypoxia, chronic inflammation, rare inherited germline mutations, the RAS oncogene, oncogenic viruses, and age? Is there any common pathway that can link those to what we call cancer as dysregulated cell growth? And the answer is absolutely. I was able to do this, and I showed that all of these things hit the mitochondria, causing a compensatory fermentation. So the mitochondria has that arrow RTG. So what happens is reactive ROS, reactive oxygen species, come out of the damaged mitochondria. They're called reactive oxygen species, generated from failures in oxidative phosphorylation. And those ROS are carcinogenic and mutagenic. So the mutations in the nucleus are the result of this ROS. The mitochondria then signal the nucleus, okay, if I can't generate sufficient energy from oxygen, how am I going to stay alive? I have to ferment. That means energy without oxygen. What are the fuels for fermentation? Glucose and glutamine. But how am I going to get enough glucose and glutamine into the cell to replace the efficient energy from oxygen? I have to turn on transporters on the surface of the cell to bring in large amounts of glucose and glutamine. And what happens, the mitochondria signals the nucleus to open the floodgates on the surface of the cell, which are oncogenes, and they bring in large amounts of glucose and glutamine through the glycolysis and glutaminolysis pathways. So we now know that the nuclear mutations are epiphenomena from damage to oxidative phosphorylation, and the reconfiguration of the cell is to bring in these fermentable fuels. And on the right, you see the hallmarks of cancer. All of those hallmarks can now be linked back to the destabilization of energy metabolism in the mitochondria. So the cell falls back on its default state, which is proliferation, driven by ancient fermentation metabolism, driven by glucose and glutamine. The abnormal blood vessels, angiogenesis, come from when you have inefficient respiration, when you have inefficient energy metabolism, you throw out these waste products into the microenvironment called lactic acid and succinic acid. They acidify the microenvironment. The body then looks at cancer as a wound, bringing in abnormal blood vessels. And then you say, well, why aren't these cancer cells undergoing programmed cell death, apoptosis? Because what controls apoptosis is the organelle called the mitochondrion. Mitochondrial is the kill switch. The kill switch is broken. The cells now bypass the natural death of the cell. And then the metastasis, which we have clearly shown, is a fusion hybridization. This is amazing. When we have a cancer in a group of cells in a tissue growing in a dysregulated way, our immune system looks at as a wound, but they throw out growth factors and cytokines in a wrong context, making these cells grow even faster. And then what happens, they fuse. To help heal wounds, our immune cells fuse with the cancer cells, thereby diluting cytoplasm, making the immune cell now a dysregulated cell, which already has the capacity to move in and out of cell tissue, so they become metastatic. That means the cancer spreads from one site to the different organs. What's that spreading? It's immune cell fusion hybridization. What do those cells need? They need glutamine. Now we know how to kill metastatic cancer, so everything makes sense. Man, this whole cancer thing can be eviscerated once you know how to connect all these dots and you understand the biology. So we were able to go through. And then how do we know this? Because we have tested it. We have tested it in preclinical systems and we have tested it in humans. And we see very effective management once we know what's going on, once we can understand the processes by which all of this happens. And the papers that I have written explain this. We have a big paper, several big papers that explain all the details. And it's in my book where I first came up with these concepts. And my students and I have worked it out, working it out better and more clear. And we've modeled it. We've built press pulse concepts on this. So clearly, the oncogenic paradox has been solved. No longer a mystery. The somatic mutations can be explained. No more a mystery. Dysregulated cell growth. No more a mystery. Metastatic cancer. Not a mystery. So we now know how to manage this disorder effectively using metabolic approaches that target the fuels that are driving the dysregulated cell growth. Everything makes sense. The problem is the field cannot understand. They either don't want to understand it, they refuse to understand it, they're driven by ideology. And therefore, we cannot adapt this readily into the clinics for a variety of reasons. I said a lot here, but listen, it's all, I've written it all out. My colleagues and I, we've published all this. People can do a deep dive on it. Just read the literature. If you don't think I'm right, email me. I'll tell you. I'll explain it to you more. You look at the data, man. Go out and look at the results that you're getting from this. These guys, these stage 4 cancer patients, they should have been dead. They're walking around. We don't say we cure. I don't ever use the cure word. That cure. Oh, everybody thinks you're going to cure cancer like the common cold. It's called long-term management. Can you manage the disease without toxicity? The answer is yes. Does it lead to a cure? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. All we know is that you can manage it more effectively than what we're currently doing today. It's good that you pull that up. It's good that you pull those things up, man. I haven't had anybody else do that. My hat's off to you. You know, you're the best. You're the only guy that really is asking the most appropriate questions.
I try to do my best in every interview that I can.
Well, you are. You're doing your best, I'll tell you that much, because a lot of people don't ask me these kinds of questions. I'm very happy that you are. It gives me an opportunity to let you know what's going on.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. I was curious about your thoughts on autism, because it seems like kids just completely change to a different person, and it's unusual.
I can't really speak about autism. I went to the Autism Speaks meeting several years ago, and it was like the blind leading the blind. That they really have a lot of challenges. And the other thing about autism is that they've increased the umbrella to who is classified as being autistic and who isn't. And I think that creates a greater problem, because you have students or children that really don't have autism, but they've been put under the umbrella of autism. My colleague Athanasius Evangelio, who works with me on the cancer, did some work on ketogenic diet for kids that have autism, and they were able to get some improvement. As far as the neurological mechanisms that are involved with that, it's never been completely clear. As I said, there's a lot of ambiguity about autism as far as the neurological mechanisms, but I don't want to speak too much about it. It's not in my field. I do know about it, but I don't want to speak in detail about that.
I'm going to pull up another chart here. This is from your work also. And this is about glucose, ketones, the diet. Would you care to just talk about what this chart is?
Yeah, well, so we had this first put in for our work with epilepsy because we knew that children with epilepsy seizures would stop or get managed when you lowered the blood sugar and elevated the ketones. The mechanisms in the brain for how that happens to manage epilepsy is not entirely clear, but for cancer, it's strikingly clear. So we just use the same. I worked in epilepsy for decades at Yale University and here at Boston College. We developed some of the best animal models for epilepsy. And we could manage the epileptic seizures by lowering blood sugar and elevating ketones. And this is the strategy for managing epilepsy in the clinic for children with epilepsy. The ketogenic diet is a diet that can manage seizures quite effectively. Atkins kinds of diets and modified ketogenic diets. But for cancer, it works. The concept can be the same. The cancer cells absolutely require glucose for rapid growth. So you can lower the glucose with diets, just like we do for epilepsy. And when you lower glucose, ketones are naturally produced from mobilized fats, and the cancer cells can't use the fat for energy. So they actually store lipid droplets in the cytoplasm because the fats are stored as lipid drops rather than being metabolized. And ketones and fatty acids cannot be used as an alternative to glucose and glutamine. So the key for managing cancer is lower the blood sugar and elevate the ketones. Ketones can be used by all normal. So the red line is allowing the normal body to transition over to an alternative fuel so we can push glucose down. Once the patient is in this managed state, then we go in with our press pulse concepts and target the glutamine. So this is the first step in the metabolic therapy. So you get your blood and you get a low GKI. So when you have this kind of a situation, the glucose ketone index now becomes low, and now the patient becomes super sensitized to low doses of drugs that will target the glucose and the glutamine. It's really nice. You got to love this kind of stuff. It not only does it make sense, it actually works.
You talked about how you bought Twinkies 10 years ago. Do you still
right
have
here.
that with you today?
Yeah, I got them right here. Well, here it is. Okay, look. Yeah, here's one right here. Okay, look at it. Looks just as fresh as. Last year, a mouse broke into the box, and he seemed to devour it. So clearly, it's a 10. I bought it. I think I don't know. Was it 2010 or 11? But they look pretty. And down there in there's a bar in Atlanta. They deep fry these things, and they put chocolate and powdered sugar on top of it. Those guys in Atlanta, man, they're all over those things.
Oh yeah, we have deep fried Oreos where I'm from.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So and if you look at the ingredients on the back of the box, it's like all chemicals. So it's just like guarantees to survive into the next millennia. So so I got them. I use them as a prop in my class. I said, these are 10-year-old, maybe 11, 12-year-old Twinkies. And, we laugh because the Schmucker's Jelly Company just bought out I put that all over the place too. They say Americans love Twinkie. You can't stop eating the Twinkies. Yeah. Well, just let you know, man, just remember your health. So it's all like synthetic stuff and highly processed carbs. Probably one of the best food items to put you into a state of obesity, chronic diseases, dementia. This is the pill that you need to take for all your chronic diseases. Just pound those Twinkies. You should get into chronic disease pretty quick.
I was surprised Red 40 is in Twinkies.
Yeah, I was surprised a lot of this stuff, everything modified. Yeah, I mean, it's like all chemicals and stuff. Sugar, top list. Sometimes they used to put in a lot of things have high fructose, like corn syrup. That's another killer. So actually, sugar is healthier for you than high fructose corn syrup. But you can see a lot of these things. I don't know if people look at this total. It's when you put fat and sugar together that's really unhealthy. Fat by itself is good because it'll lower blood sugar. But when you put fat and sugar together, you get super fat because the body sees the energy. We don't pee out glucose, right? Unless you have some sort of diabetic situation. So glucose is mobilized to fat. So the fat that we have in our adipose tissue is all coming from glucose. It's not coming from fat. But if you have fat in your body, the body will store the glucose as fat. So again, you have to know the physiology. People need to know physiology. So when you see, what is it called? Low fat foods, that means you mean high, what does that get? Low carb. Oh, this is low carb. Was it low carb? High fat? But I don't remember. But you see them advertised. This is something like this, but whatever it is, carbohydrate is stored as fat. Just remember that carbs are stored as fat. And if you have a lot of fat and carbs together, like a Twinkie, you're going to be storing that as fat, unless you burn it off, unless you're willing to run and swim and do a lot of exercise to burn it off.
I don't know what your religious views are. Personally, I believe in God. I'm a Christian, and I've read about and watched videos on how people are completely healed from a chronic disease. Have you ever seen something like that? Anything supernatural, something you can't explain in the medical field?
Not unless it's combined with a radical change in diet. When people say, "Oh, I did all this prayer," oftentimes they also dovetailed it with some radical change in diet at the same time. Prayer by itself can be powerful, allows you to accept some of the stringency that might be necessary for that. But we looked into that with epilepsy in one of the Bibles. It was very interesting. We have a biblical scholar here at Boston College, of course, it's a Jesuit university. And I started to ask about prayer and fasting. And because it was considered that prayer and fasting could remove some chronic diseases or some of these kinds of things. And I started to find it very surprising because Christ supposedly cured some person with epilepsy. And he said cures can only come by prayer and fasting. And we know that if a person with epilepsy, or maybe even with cancer, that fasted and prayed, could certainly have an effect on the outcome of the disorder. However, but the way the Bible was interpreted, it was very different. It was strikingly different than what we thought. It turned out that the intention was that the person's epilepsy could be cured not by the person praying and fasting, but by other people praying and fasting for the sick patient. And that makes no sense to me at all. That's called distant healing. And that doesn't work. Believe me, there's no clinical trial that ever showed that works. What does work is when the afflicted individual prays and fasts. That will work. Whether prayer can cure the disease without fasting, I don't know. We want to do that or try a clinical trial and something like that and see what happens. We can test all that, but people aren't willing to do any of that stuff. But I think for those that are religious, you pray and you fast, and you can probably manage a lot of different chronic disorders because the prayer will give you the strength to kind of power through what you need to do. So I can see how that can be linked, but I can't see how someone else, like for example, if I were sick and you decided to help me, and you're not going to eat food for 3 weeks, and you're going to pray, and my tumor is going to go away, I don't think that's going to happen. So even if I were to do it the opposite. So you have to look at it in different ways. But I think prayer and fasting for the afflicted individual can certainly be very helpful. Makes sense, and it would work. Makes sense to you, right? It makes sense to you?
In my personal opinion, I think prayer, God can do anything and work miracles. I think it is interesting that there is around 70 Bible verses about fasting. So I want to get into this Bible story because it is very interesting, and then we'll get back to the interview. This story in the Bible talks about how a boy has symptoms that seem similar to someone with a seizure disorder or epileptic symptoms. So that's why people think the boy had epilepsy. Now, if we look at Matthew 4:24, we know that Jesus cured people with various diseases, people that were actually demon-possessed and people that just had a chronic disease. In this story, it's actually not a disease. In Mark verse 20, it says, when the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. So to me, that seems pretty clear that it was a demon, and it's almost like the demon was scared. He knew the presence of Jesus was there. Mark 22 says, it has often cast him into fire and into water to destroy him. So it's like something was taking over the boy's body. And the demon was aware of who Jesus was. So this story takes place. You have a boy who's demon-possessed. You have the boy's father. You have the 9 disciples that were trying to cast out the demon themselves. Then you have the 3 disciples that are with Jesus. And you have the crowd of people, the scribes. The father of the boy brought his son that was demon-possessed to the disciples. The disciples had a major problem. They could not cast out the demon that was in the boy. Now we know that the disciples have been given power by Jesus to heal the sick and cast out evil spirits. So there's something about this one that is different. And it says that they were arguing with the scribes. So maybe the scribes were saying things like, your God is not real, you're a false prophet, since none of the disciples could cast out the demon in the boy. So the father said this to Jesus. He said, I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. So you have Jesus here that arrived in this town. There's a crowd around him. And he said, O faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him to me. And it looks like the father, his faith wasn't very strong, because he says, but if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. So he used the word, but if you can. So he's looking at God, asking him, but if you can. So his faith is definitely not strong in this situation. And Jesus says to him, if you can, all things are possible for one who believes. And then the boy's father said, I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief. So it's almost like the boy's father said something along the lines of, show me that I was wrong to doubt you. You know, his faith is not strong. And there's also something that's wrong with the disciples' faith. Jesus rebuked the impure spirit, and people thought the boy died. So it's almost like they thought Jesus failed for a brief moment because the boy was laying there, but then Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him to his feet, and he stood up, and the boy was healed. So after all this happened, Jesus and the disciples were together, and the disciples asked him privately, why couldn't we drive out the demon? And Jesus replied, this kind can come out only by prayer. But some translations say prayer and fasting. Some translations do not have fasting in there. There's biblical scholars that provide additional insight into this, but I'll put some articles down below about this. And it talks about the 2 best manuscripts, some of the most highly respected manuscripts. It does not have fasting. And the whole story was the problem with their unbelief. The disciples had some type of faith problem. There is a faith issue. I mean, maybe they didn't have confidence in God's power. You know, they casted out demons before. So in this scenario, there's something going on. And a little side note for fasting, if you're a Christian, fasting is you're basically giving up food or something else for a period of time in order to focus on God, your thoughts on God, and to deepen one's relationship with God. So in Christianity, you're not doing it for health benefits, even though it does have health benefits, like we're talking about in this interview. But if you're a Christian, you're not doing it for health benefits. You're doing it to focus on God. Fasting is not something you do to get something from God. You can have selfish prayers with not the right intention. God may not give you what you want. It's ultimately God's will. And in this story, I think Jesus is saying to the disciples that you don't have the power or authority to do this. You can only do this through Him. You will never be able to do it on your own. You're going to have to depend on God, and prayer is that connection with God. I think prayer and fasting is important, but ultimately it is God's will. God is the only one that can heal somebody. So I think the medical field does agree with that fasting is beneficial.
Absolutely. All religions have that. All religions have fasting as part of their penance. And that is very healthy. That is an absolute health activity, fasting. If you do it the right way, even in the Christian Bible, Christ 40 days and 40 nights fasting. When you start getting ketones into the brain, you have all kinds of new introspection. This has been known also. So ketones can make neurons work far better. And we know that. So there's a neurological composition to burning ketones. So there's biochemical explanations for a lot of things that can happen. And a lot of these things can be intertwined with a knowledge of biochemistry.
You see any results with patients that are religious versus are not?
I think, though, yes. I think there are. The religious people seem to do better. And I think that's because they're able to bring in a spirituality that I'm not saying we have strong clinical evidence to support what I'm saying, but I think that helps them deal mentally because don't forget, in cancer, mental stress elevates blood sugar. And if you have a way to reduce mental stress as the result of your affliction, and whether that comes from spirituality, prayer, or whatever, it has a biochemical basis for doing that. Now, if people want to attribute to a higher power, that's okay. The issue is there is a clear biochemical connection to that can explain on a scientific basis what's happening. So either way, yes, I think there is a benefit to that.
Do you think some of them are scared to maybe lose their job because they don't talk about this?
I think that's because of the system that they're working under. They are obligated to treat patients according to a standard procedure. They call the standards of care. And if you deviate from the standards of care in any way, you could jeopardize your license to practice medicine. And this has happened to some physicians that I know who now, of course, they're doing it to not only help what they think protect the patient, but also to protect the system that they work in. The problem is that when you deviate from the standard of care, you have to use something that has a scientific validity and basis to it. And some physicians, unfortunately, deviate to snake oil kinds of quackery, and that can also harm the patient. So you have to know what you're deviating to from. If you're going to not use the standard of care, it has to have a solid scientific basis for why you're not using it. Metabolic therapy can sometimes be thrown into the quackery snake oil because the physicians don't understand or the system is not as familiar with the scientific issues as I am and some of the folks that I work with are. So I think there has to be a re-education to know what is scientifically established and what isn't, and how we separate those, because there's always some charlatan out there willing to make a buck on someone's misunderstanding or lack of knowledge. And physicians will try to protect themselves by staying within the system to protect themselves from falling into those situations. But again, it's the accumulation of knowledge that will allow us to determine what should be done and what should not be done.
I'm going to pull up a tweet from you. I believe this is pinned on your Twitter. And you talked about how there was a study 2.5 months longer.
Yeah.
Maybe you could talk about this right here.
Yeah, well, that's already a published paper, and there's the link to the paper so people can capture that and go into the Google and then pull up the very paper that talks about this. We've spent billions of dollars on all of these targeting drugs. And in that study, they looked at 92 drugs that were developed from the year 2000 to 2016. And these drugs, interestingly enough, these drugs look like the tumor. The tumor responds to the drugs. Oh, look at the images. They look like the tumor is shrinking. But the overall survival is only 2.5 months at the cost of billions and billions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry building these drugs. And they put all the drugs in the paper so people can go and look at them. The drugs are often associated with significant adverse side effects from these drugs, Opdivo, Keytruda. You hear them advertised on television. These drugs are based on the somatic mutation theory. And the reason why these drugs are not providing any real long-term benefits is because the theory under which the drugs are developed is incorrect. So when you have an incorrect theory, the outcome is never going to be optimal. And we're going to get situations like this where the drugs are based on the cancer being a genetic disease. It's not a genetic disease. If it's not a genetic disease, how effective do you think the drugs are going to be based on an incorrect theory? Now, it's very interesting with some of these drugs. You get about 20% of patients that really do well on these drugs. Then you get about 60% of the patients that it really doesn't do anything to help you. And then you get about 20% of the patients called hyperprogressive disease, where the drugs themselves will kill you faster than the tumor. So the tumor begins to grow out of control. A lot of the drugs will blow out your liver and kidney before they kill the tumor. So as I said, you should never treat any human being with any therapy that has a remote possibility of killing them, much less harming them. And yet we're using all this based on this crazy stuff that you hear on television, Opdivo, Keytruda, all these things. They're based on the somatic mutation theory, CAR-T, immunotherapy. But all of the treatments that we're doing in these trials, so many of the treatments that we're doing are based on these drugs, based on an incorrect theory. So we keep beating the dead horse, expecting it to get up and walk away. It's not. Yes, there are some people that will be benefited, but there'll be just as many that will be significantly harmed or killed as the result of this. And this is, to me, unacceptable. I don't know. Maybe the field thinks it's acceptable. I don't consider it acceptable. I think it's immoral to do this and then charge people all this money. This is immoral. It's financial toxicity as well. I mean, okay, your insurance company covers 80% of the bill. So if the bill is $100,000, you got to come up with $20,000. You know, that's your, and for folks that are living paycheck to paycheck, they can't afford this. This is immoral. They shouldn't do this. You know, people should get, if you get me a drug that gives me 5 years of quality of life, I'll be happy to pay for it. But I'm not going to be paying all this money for something that could kill me or does not give me long-term progression-free survival. Why am I paying for all this when it doesn't work? It's absurd.
Let's say someone's been diagnosed with cancer. What do you think their first step should be? Would it just be to really research what kind of cancer it is, or?
Well, they run off to the top medical schools usually. You know, we have Dana-Farber here, the MD Anderson, Sloan Kettering, Moffitt Cancer Center, the Fred Hutch. They're all over the place. You know, these cancer centers. They're expecting the folks. What we say to them: if you want to go to the hospitals and have a diagnosis, make sure whatever you ask the physician, how is the treatment you're going to give me going to selectively target my glucose and glutamine and not harm the normal cells in my body? And what happens is they ask those questions, and of course they get the deer in the headlight look. They have no clue what the patient is talking about, and then the patient has to, they either know or they don't know. It's a distribution of knowledge. The physician should know the answers to these questions, and the physicians should say, the oncologists say, well, yes, I realize that, and we're going to make a therapy that's going to combine glucose glutamine targeting with a couple of things that we think would be enhancing that effect. And if you can get oncologists that understand that, then you're going to do much better than saying, let's just take this immunotherapy or whatever toxic poison they're going to give you, radiation or whatever it is. because a lot of these guys, they don't really understand the biology of what they're dealing with, and the poor patient doesn't understand. So you got the blind leading the blind right there, and the outcome can often be disastrous. Not only that, if the folks, because don't forget, we have so many thousands and thousands of cancer survivors, but we also know that they pay a serious price, many of them, for this, and they can be harmed, irrevocably harmed, by having neuropsychiatric problem, hormonal problem, bone density problems, digestive problems that all contribute to a lower longevity on the planet through the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy. So you really want to emerge from your cancer healthier than when you started. Like you're actually much healthier. You got rid of all your chronic diseases along with the cancer, and that's what metabolic therapy has the possibility to do.
In the future, how do you envision collaboration between researchers, doctors, and patients in advancing metabolic therapies for cancer?
It's going to be a team effort between the patient and the caregiver, and they're both going to be on the same page, and they're both going to have opportunities through the cell phones, through linkages, for both groups to be analyzing the data as in real time. So it's not, you send the guy home for 3 months, come back. I mean, the issue here is you're monitoring this guy's physiological health in real time, and the doctors are keeping a log of it, and the patient is keeping a log of it. So they both can discuss together options that might be to improve their overall health or adjust the treatments that benefit the patient. So it's going to be a feed forward with feedback communication between the patient and the physician. The physician is there to guide and provide knowledge to the patient, give them certain opportunities that they might not have considered before, and let them try it out and see how it works. And if it really works, stay that course. If it doesn't, we're going to modify it a little bit. So it's going to be a team effort because both the patient and the physician will both have an understanding of what needs to be done and strategies that can prove outcome.
If people want to check out your work, do they just Google your name? Would that be the best way to do it?
Yeah, they can Google my name and they can go on and read the papers that we've published. They're open access, so anybody that has access to the internet can download the paper or read it directly on there. And everything that I've said is, with the exception of a few things, is published. So you can look at that. It gives patients the power. Also, we have a very interesting paper on a canine dog cancer, which is very, very, a lot of people are reading that. A lot of veterinarians are embracing this. They know for their dogs that have cancer the same way the humans have. So we published that paper. And that also was done by a layperson who developed their own metabolic therapy for their dog. And actually, that was a cure. The dog died of old age from heart disease, not from the cancer. And so a lot of dog owners are seeing that. They can apply it themselves. And then they say, well, geez, if it works so good on these dogs, how about us? What if we do similar kinds of things? And the answer is yes. It works just as well on dogs and humans if it's done the right way. So all that's on the internet, yes. And importantly, the research that we do here at Boston College is funded largely by private foundations and philanthropy. And it's important to know that we have some supporters of what we do that are clearly interested in changing the paradigm. And they want to be part, they feel this is bigger than themselves, and they want to be part of the change, this paradigm shift. And they're willing to support us through the university or through the foundations so that we can vet our preclinical studies and then work with clinicians to see how it works in clinical settings. So this is where the funding comes from, because this ultimately will be the resolution or the solution to the cancer problem. And some folks are out there and they just say, geez, this is really interesting stuff. It has rock solid science behind it. And I just feel I want to be part of this whole thing. And I'm willing to throw some funding into Boston College to support this cancer research, or through Travis Christofferson's Foundations for Metabolic Therapies, or some of the other foundations that support our work. So this will happen. As long as we can continue to improve dosage, timing, and scheduling, we'll break down those barriers, the firewalls that prevent us from doing what we need to do. And eventually it's going to become the new standard of care for cancer management. And at the same time, people are going to benefit overall in their health and vitality and longevity on the planet.
Well, Dr. Seyfried, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
I want to thank you for the depth of the questions and the accuracy and the reading that you have done to look into this, because this was one of the more engaging interviews, mainly because the host yourself has done an excellent job in looking into the details that actually are responsible and it's actually going to help move the field forward for sure. So thank
Well, I
you.
appreciate that. I'm not an expert in any of this stuff. I just try to do the best I can when I interview someone. So that means a lot.
Well, you've done an excellent job. Thank you.